tentative plan in place, but that because of the cuts made had been derailed tonight?
He had an offer to fight in Russia in May, and our deal with HBO would have allowed that to happen. And we were considering it. Obviously, with the cuts that were guys, he can't be fighting in 8 weeks. That's just not possible.
All the stuff, all the turmoil that happened this week, again, I want to reiterate and just review with you that you are of the opinion that you guys are going to move ahead with some kind of potential legal action on this Adonis Stevenson fight?
Our position is that we have a deal with Duva and Michelle. We are going to protect our rights as we always do. We are reserving all our rights in this moment, and we'll make a decision next week about how we're going to proceed.
Certainly, I think that's not going to become some kind of prolonged thing, though, where it could in any way affect Kovalev's activity.
I'm going to leave that to the lawyers. I am quite sure that everything will work out where it's supposed to. I'm not going to rule out anything at this point.
What were your feelings with his comments in the ring tonight when he referenced Adonis? And I won't repeat what he said.
You know, the thing about Sergey, he's so real. He speaks from the heart. And look, think of the emotional roller coaster he's been on this week. That was the thing that scared me the most. You have a young kid in Cedric Agnew who really came to win, and he is getting the opportunity of his lifetime, and he's doing everything he can to win. And here you have Sergey, who had to have been let down emotionally somewhat after having his big plans to be the biggest thing in boxing by the end of this year, derailed perhaps for a while. Again, our position is that there's going to be a fight in the fall, and let's see what happens. I'm not so sure that plans have been completely derailed.
Another fighter of yours held court this evening prior to the fight. That's Curtis Stevens. Obviously, he fights on Friday. He was talking about some big things in the future. He's looking at maybe a fight you guys are maybe trying to put together with James Kirkland. And, of course, the topic of Peter Quillen came up again. Can you just talk about the potential for those two matchups?
Well, we've been talking to HBO, and Kirkland's at the top of the list of people we would like him to fight. We had conversations about him fighting Lemieux. We have had conversations about Endam. It's another fight we can make. I think there are a few really good opponents for Curtis, and we would like to pursue those. And as far as Quillen, we made the call. We talked to his promoter, and we got we'll get back to you. And that was the last we heard of him. So we kind of know about the risk aversion of certain fighters, and it's really turning into quite a pattern, isn't it?
Well, I have to say, I think several of us saw the barbs that were exchanged between you and Steven over Twitter the last couple of days, and he seemed to poise it as you guys aren't approaching him with any of these offers. So was that officially done, at least in this case, then with Quillen?
Well, it wasn't him. We approached his promoter, and as far as offers, I don't really need any showbox cards. I've got a series on NBC.
Wow.
Does that mean do you remain basically hopeless that fight could happen because of the separation between the networks? It just seems like it's so unlikely at this point.
Look, Curtis Stevens can fight anywhere he wants. He's not tied to any network. If there is an offer for a Quillen fight, we'd sure like to hear it. Generally, the champion makes offers to the challenger. It doesn't work the other way around.
Back to Kovalev for a second. The name that obviously everyone wants to talk about, Andre Ward, but also another fight that would be intriguing, I think, to some would be Jean Pascal. What is your confidence of that fight being able to be made?
I really don't know, but this is one of the things we're going to pursue, of course. It's a natural.
Is that also Yvonne Michel? I believe he's...
I am told that he is no longer with Yvonne Michel.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. This had to be nerve-wracking. This must have been a very stressful week for you.
You think?
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you.
All right. Something I'd like to ask, since this was such a big storm with Adonis Stevenson and Kovalev, you have another big main event coming up in Philadelphia.
Yes!
Cunningham and Mansour.
Thank you for mentioning that.
Tell us about that and how you've been able to give that the amount of attention it needs.
Well, fortunately, I've got this wonderful staff, which does all the work. I just set them up and then they go from there. No, that has been really more stressful to the wonderful people who work at main events than it has been for me. I'm generally working on things that are coming in the future. I'm working on events that are going to happen. I'm worrying about Sergey's next fight now, whereas they're worrying about the fight on Friday. So all I have to do is interviews, so that's all. It's all good for me. They're under a lot of stress.
Well, speaking of the future, those two heavyweights are clashing. It's almost like an eliminator. What do you have in store for the winner?
It depends on who wins.
Okay.
And I really don't know what the answer to that's going to be. It's a terrific fight. It's interesting to me because you've got Mansour, who's physically the older guy chronologically, but he's the prospect. And he's testing his skills against the world-class fighter who's actually younger than he is. And I really don't know who wins. Their styles mesh beautifully. We know Steve likes to mix it up too much. He doesn't need to, but he does. Mansour's going to just be coming forward because what else can he do? And he's got such a short window if he's going to get anywhere. Even though he's so young looking for a guy in his 40s, he really. He doesn't have much time. For him, he really has to win this fight or really impress if he doesn't win, or really it is the end of the road for him. So I expect you're going to have, there's a lot on the line there. It's going to make it a really intriguing fight.
What are the chances of the winner facing Glasgow? And would that fight be in the United States or in Europe?
I think if that fight happened, it would be in the United States, and anything's possible.
Okay. All right. On your undercard, you also have Showtime Stevens. He like everybody thanks Al Heyman. He wanted to thank you as well.
I didn't even make him do it.
Well, he seems to be a guy that wants to fight anybody.
Yeah, he really.
It's kind of like a throwback. Do you feel the Cold War has hurt a guy like Showtime Stevens?
I don't think it hurts Curtis at all. Most of the middleweights are all fighting over at HBO, and we have a great relationship with them. There's one or two middleweights fighting over at the other network, and it's a shame because a fight with certainly Quillen or maybe down the line Danny Jacobs makes sense. They're all from Brooklyn. It's a natural, but what can you do? They've got their league, and they have the members of their league fight each other, and they generally don't have room for anybody else, so God bless them.
What would have to happen for him to get a rematch with Golovkin?
I think he'd have to win a world title. And I think he might.
Okay.
Right, great. So my question is, you talked a little bit about Kirkland potentially going up against Curtis and that fight happening. What would be the weight that you would be looking at for that fight? We know Kirkland's fought a lot, sort of at 154.
Oh, it'd have to be at 160.
So you have to move
Curtis
up to make that.
Curtis isn't getting below 160.
Yeah, he talked when we talked to him earlier. He said that he'd be open to the idea potentially of fighting at a lesser weight if the dollars made sense. That's what he said.
Yeah, well.
But it'd have to be at 160. It's a compelling fight, and I think it would be a great fight if it were to come off. The other question I have is with respect to Kovalev and just looking at the landscape of sort of boxing. What's your general perspective on just how things are going without the best fighters not fighting each other, kind of this avoidance that's going on? What's your just general comments about the sort of state of boxing today?
It's not the first time this happened. Years ago, Don King took Mike Tyson and Julio Chavez over to Showtime and off HBO. It happened, believe it or not. The world kept turning and boxing existed, and HBO built some tremendous stars during that time. Ultimately, the fight between Mike Tyson and Lewis and Holyfield, they happened. They happened eventually. I think this is a short-term problem. I don't see it lasting that long because frankly, the business model doesn't hold up. And in time, I think it's interesting. Every fighter's goal is to be a pay-per-view star. Everybody wants to make money, but clearly that's where you really make money, pay-per-view. I want you to sit down and think about every pay-per-view star that you can think of, and tell me, aside from Floyd Mayweather, what pay-per-view star has the same manager? Because the answer is nobody. Every other one was developed elsewhere. So those stars are going to keep being developed. They're going to keep being developed in the very place where every other previous one was, and that is HBO. And guys are going to come along. The generation's changing over. The big stars in the pay-per-view world right now are in their late 30s. and a new generation's coming, and I do believe it's people like Kovalev and Golovkin and Chavez Jr., who's still young and already has a big pay-per-view following. I think Andre Ward fits in with them. He's not the the A-side pay-per-view traction. Not sure he ever will be, but he certainly fits in with those A-side guys. There are possibilities out there, and they will come to pass. In the light heavyweight division in particular, we're talking about two guys who, one of them is 37 and a half, and the other one's almost 50. Come on, 2-3 years from now, they're irrelevant. So there's going to be a great division, and when it has stars in it, guys like Kovalev and like Golovkin and Chavez Jr. and Andre Ward, that's got some meat. That's something that people are going to want to come out and see. So I'm very optimistic.
Great. Excellent.
Well, I was wondering, since you're actually bringing boxing back to Philadelphia, not the outskirts,
Everywhere we're bringing it.
we're happy to bring it to Philadelphia, as much as a boxing town it is.
Yes.
What has to happen in Philadelphia for you to run more events there in that great fighting town?
We have to sell a lot of tickets on Friday. That's all.
All right. I think that's it for me.
Help us. Tell everybody to come out. It's going to be a great show.
We'll do, and don't forget DC too. You're a
One
hotbed as
city
well.
at a time. One city at a time. I can only handle one city at a time.
I got you.
Come to Philly first.
We're coming to Philly on Friday. Come on. Come on out. Okay?